So we're going to get started. Good evening. My name is Carl Arrow. I am the chair of the Legislative Redistricting Advisory Commission. I'm going to say a couple of words. I'm going to run through it real quick. It's just an introductory thing. We're going to turn it over to Michelle Davis of the Department of Legislative Services to give you a quick briefing on the numbers in this area, and then we'll take public testimony. We will be limiting people to no more than 5 minutes. We urge you to be quick. If you have written testimony, we will be happy to take it, and I'd urge you not to read it verbatim, but to summarize it if you've already turned it in. Okay, we have a number of members of the House and I think Senate here with us tonight. I'm not sure I know, I've been retired for about 5 years now, so I'm not sure I recognize anybody anymore. But we have delegates, Bill Castro, Guyton, Grammer, Ruth, Brooks, and Forbes. We also have, Guyton, I said that, okay. And did I say Grammer? Yes, I did, okay. I got 2 lists here, so I'm trying to figure out what's what. Basically, what we're here to do, and Senator Sidner, who I should know. To my right is Senate President Bill Ferguson. To my left, House Speaker Adrian Jones. To her left is House Majority Leader Eric Liedtke. Senator Chris West sitting in for Senator Simon Ayer. Delegate Buckles not here, and we were waiting on Melanie Griffith, Senate Pro Tem, and we still expect her to show up. So hopefully she's getting here soon. Basically, as you all know, I'm sure redistricting is a complicated thing. It's also an essential thing that we have to do every 10 years. The primary objectives are basically to get the districts aligned and built so that it's one person, one vote, and so that nobody's vote counts more than anybody else's, and to provide voters with the opportunity to elect people of their choice. No guarantees there, but that's the goal. Population increases, we all know that. It doesn't do so evenly. So whether you've gained population, whether you've lost population, it's really a matter of how all of that occurs in relation to each other. So you can lose, but maybe not too much. You can gain a lot, but in relationship to other areas that have gained, and you're going to hear about that in a minute, the impact is not as great as you might think it would be. We have a number of criteria, legal and constitutional, that we need to pay close attention to when drawing districts, and that oftentimes they will conflict with each other. I've seen this now. This is my 5th go around with redistricting. The first time I did it was in 1982. So I've seen a lot of changes in the process, and believe me, it's much more open than it ever was before. So we're going to deal with legislative and congressional districts, and we need to consider the diversity of Maryland's population as well as its interesting geography. So we'll be coping with those 2 things as we go along, and both of those things make the task much more complex. So with the General Assembly having a constitutional responsibility to consider and act on this, we've been created to receive your input, and that is what we're here to do, to listen, take into consideration what you're saying. One other housekeeping measure, I usually do at the end, but I'm going to do it right now, and that is if you have general questions, if you go to the General Assembly's website and find under committees, find the Legislative Redistricting Advisory Commission. There are several places you can get information or ask questions. So for general questions, it's redistricting _LRAC at mlis.state.d.us. It's also to submit testimony. It's also it's money _LRAC, and you're using the same address of mlis.state.d.us. And if you want to submit maps, it's the same thing, maps _LRAC at that address, okay? All right, so with all that, I'm going to turn it over to Michelle, who will brief us on the.
That's one. Check, check one, one, one. Check, 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 check.
Okay, okay, there we go. I might go in and out. Yeah. Okay, my name is Michelle Davis. Sorry about that. Um, I'm the redistricting coordinator for legislative services, and I'm just going to do an overview of our census results we had in Maryland and how that affects our current map, the current districts that we have. Um, Most of the graphics are legislative districts, so you won't see the congressional. Um, and I'll just make a few points about that. So I'd like to first start out with the important numbers. So this is a very numbers driven process. Let me start with the top number. That is Maryland's 2020 adjusted census population. And if you don't already know what that means, I will tell you. So the Census Bureau reports a slightly different number, slightly higher number for Maryland's official census population. So this number reflects our compliance with state law that requires us to count prisoners not where they're incarcerated, but where they last lived, their last known residence. So we actually take the census data and move prisoners out of the prison and put them in other locations in the state representing where they lived. Why is the number different? Because you might think, well, if you're just moving people around, you're not changing the number of people. You would be correct. But in Maryland, the law states that if a prisoner was not a resident of Maryland, we don't count him or her, I'm sorry, for purposes of redistricting. So that's why the number is slightly different. So this number is the population number that we use for congressional and legislative districts. We have 8 congressional districts in Maryland. That number you see is what each congressional district should contain in terms of people. So it's basically that number above divided by 8. It's a odd number, so obviously at least one congressional district will have a slightly different population, but for the most part we get it within a few people. You can count on one hand the difference. For our legislative districts, the ideal district number for a complete senatorial district with three legislators in it, 3 delegates, I should say, is that number 131,391. And then we also have ideal numbers for 2-member districts and for single-member districts. For the legislative map, it is not as precise as the congressional map under the law, so there is some wiggle room, so you can be plus or minus 5% in general. That's not a hard and fast rule, but that is a pretty practice all over the states, and courts tend to agree with that, plus or minus 5%. So you can take those numbers and sort of add 5% or subtract 5%, somewhere in that range. This map is a map from the Maryland Department of Planning, which visually shows you the population growth over the last decade. That is from the 2010 census to the 2020 census. So the counties in dark blue are the counties that grew the most. And as you can see, there are 4 of them. Counties, the counties who in the slightly lighter blue Oh my. Okay, the counties in a slightly lighter blue grew a lot, but as you can see, it's on a scale there. We're in Baltimore County, and Baltimore County had modest growth, about 6%. But you'll notice that they didn't grow as much as a lot of the other counties, sort of in the central part of the state. So this map is sort of a close-up of the current districts in Baltimore County. And what you see there is sort of a color code to tell you right now the existing district, whether the population is under or over that new ideal number. Okay, so you can see in the west, it's the districts are sort of underpopulated, and growth happened in sort of the north and western part of the county. So what does this mean? This means that Baltimore County, even though Baltimore County grew by 6%, in redistricting, it's not just about how much you grew, but it's about how you did relative to the other jurisdictions. So if your county grew by 8% and the counties around you grew by 20%, you don't get sort of that growth in legislative districts, okay, so to speak. So it turns out that Baltimore County, even though you grew 6%, you didn't gain as much as you would think in terms of legislative districts. So you basically remain the same. If you look on this chart here, I did this calculation for all of the counties. So it's comparing by population how many legislative districts each county would have in them in 2010 versus 2020 with the new census numbers. So Baltimore County, which is about the third from the bottom there, 10 years ago, if you ran the numbers, they were due about 6.57 legislative districts. We know there's some wiggle room there. So this is just based on those ideal numbers. And in 2020, the number is pretty much the same, 6.52. And that's a result of that sort of competing growth in other counties. So what that means is if you look at that number and it's not an even number, it's not 6, it's not 7, it's not 8, it's 6.5. So 6.5 districts means there's going to be some sharing of districts in Baltimore County. In particular, these numbers mean that it's probably going to be a single member district contained somewhere in Baltimore County where that is shared with another county. And the numbers dictate that because of the population change and the growth in Baltimore County compared to the growth in the other counties. And I'm sure you'll hear a lot more about that as this process goes on. But that's pretty much the main takeaway for the Baltimore County region. Any questions? Or?
Okay, okay, thank you. Thank you, Michelle. All right, we're going to start on the top of the list and work our way down. The first person I have is Edward Johnson.
Good evening, legislators. My name is Edward Johnson. I'm a member of the Maryland Legislative Coalition, leader of the Maryland Legislative Coalition, and a member of Indivisible Towson. The Maryland Legislative Coalition is also a member of People Maps Maryland. And this morning in People's Maps Maryland, we had a discussion about the coming sessions of the legislature, and there are some things major things that I want to bring up that we talked about. Also, in the second part of my testimony, I will bring up one or two issues in terms of redistricting in Baltimore County. There are many questions about how the legislature is going to deal with redistricting during the special session and the regular session in January. I understand this is new ground in deciding on maps. In the past, it has been done by the governor. Now it's going to be decided by the legislature, not maps submitted by the governor, which is really changing everything. It is the question. One question: is it certain that the congressional maps will be released to the public on November 15th? And will there be GIS data included with those maps that people can play with, and you play with the maps and bring map makers in to do with? When will the legislator maps be released to the public? Because it needs to be done as soon as possible, and it should be done soon. During the special session, will the public be allowed into buildings in Annapolis to testify? Will there be more than one day of hearings for the maps? Will there be multiple days of hearings? One option is to consider having a combined Senate and House hearings over several days, rather than each house have separate maps hearings. How much time will be given to each person to testify? Should there be expanded, especially in the Senate, if you do combined hearing? If you don't do combined hearings, the hearing should also be hybrid. They should allow both in-person and internet testimony. Because still with COVID, there still needs to be not everybody's going to want to attend in person. The deadline for signing up for testimony should be at least near the hearing date, not 2 days prior to the testimony. So on Baltimore County question, most of the districts in North Baltimore County work as they are except 42B because of Cockeysville. Cockeysville is this area over here. Cockeysville is a 39% non-Caucasian district. And it's close to equal parts mix of African American, Latin, Asian, and at least 10% of the people live in below the poverty line. The Latin population is growing very quickly in the area. That is why the Bedonia International Elementary School was located there. The demographics of Cockeysville carries over to some parts of Lutherville, Timonium as well. Maybe in 2010, Cockeysville was put into the District 11 because they thought Cockeysville had more in common with that district. But it has resulted in not getting proper representation because it's across 83. And it's a long distance way. I mean, I've lived in that area for 30 years. And the number of campaign signs it's not to disparage those in District 11, it's just, it is a little ways away and kind of got lost in the thinking. Also, Cockeysville is split from the schools, with Delaney High School and Bedonia International School put in District 42B, not District 11. Cockeysville belongs in 42 with moving Cockeysville into districts. There's some changes that will be made, of course, in other districts. But I think that's one of the major problems in Baltimore County, and this is Cockeysville, because now the Citizens Commission is kind of gerrymandered to the eastern side of Baltimore County. They really belong in the center of the state with people in Lutherville, Timonium. So, thank you.
Testing. Hi, Chris. First of all, it's been a while since I've spoken to a live crowd rather than the little squares, so I'm going to move on here. My name is Joe Goodman. I'm here to speak about House District 42A and Senate District 42. I'm here on behalf of Campus Hills Community Association, as its vice president. I've been the vice president 2 times before, treasurer for 2 years, newsletter editor for the current 4. President Henry Caligari could not attend as tonight is his wedding anniversary, so big shoes to fill. The first half of my brief speech is for Mr. Caligari. The Campus Hills Community Association is in precinct 09-010, which encompasses North Towson. That includes Campus Hills, Towson Estates, and Cromwell Valley community associations. It is Campus Hills' wish that this precinct remains contained within a Towson-centric district. If for some reason 09-010 is drawn into a non-Towson-centric House district, it is our hope that it be included with nearby communities such as Chatterley, Hampton, Lutherville, and Timonium in a central Baltimore County district. Broadly speaking, it is important the Redistricting Committee take into account communities of interest. On a personal note, my wife and I moved to Towson 10 years ago. I've been delegate for many years, and for the past 3 years, the treasurer for Towson Communities Alliance. The current county council redistricting proposal takes us out of Towson and puts us into District 3. Currently, we have the same councilman in David Marks, we have the same delegate in Kathy Forbes, and we have the same senator in Chris West. Before that, we had Steve Lafferty and Jim Brochin. I know David, Kathy, and Chris on a first-name basis. Kathy from working with her on Student Support Network. Currently, as we speak, a traffic circle is being installed on Providence Road near the Cromwell Valley Elementary School. Representatives from Campus Hills, Breezewick, and Cromwell Valley tried again last fall to have a traffic calming solution take place after over a decade of inaction. This time, David Marks pushed for a circle. Delegate Forbes and Senator West wrote letters of support. This is but one of the many issues in Towson where David, Kathy, and Chris have represented Campus Hills and Towson for the common good. Pardon me. It's been helpful for us and other Towson communities to discuss common issues with our fellow Towson citizens. Something the proposed council map is taking away and putting us into a council district outside of Towson. As far as what we're here for tonight, we shop in Towson, we dine in Towson, our library is in Towson, our elementary schools are in Towson, our police precinct is Towson, our home mailing address is Towson. Please keep Campus Hills in Towson in your redistricting proposals. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Madam Speaker, Mr. President, and members, my name is Alex Stone, and I'm a community activist in Wheaton, Maryland, located in Montgomery County, and I live in District 19. Unfortunately, I can't attend that session Friday night due to religious reasons, but I hope you'll indulge me tonight as I speak exclusively about Montgomery County. Wheaton, Maryland is a community of interest. Unfortunately, Wheaton is currently divided between 2 state legislative districts. I respectfully am requesting that the committee consider Wheaton be reunited in one legislative district. Wheaton is a recognized unified community, and it has a distinct commercial core surrounded by residential neighborhoods. Those neighborhoods share common demographics, including a large population of Latino residents and observant Jews who organize around Wheaton synagogues. We share civic pride by dining in our local restaurants and enjoying recreational events at Wheaton's parks and playgrounds. Quite simply, reuniting Wheaton makes sense. It allows residents who share common interests, policy goals, and life experiences to be represented by one state legislative team. It also fulfills our constitutional obligation not to dilute the power of racial and religious minorities. Reuniting Wheaton would increase the opportunity for a Latino to be elected to the General Assembly, as well as allow the large local Jewish community to share a legislative team. Historically, most Wheaton residents have Silver Spring postal addresses, and while the area can be challenging for others to identify its boundaries, the residents know that the outlines of Wheaton is quite clear. I'm happy to work with the commission and the 2 legislative teams to identify multiple precincts which should be combined to unify the community. Wheaton, Maryland is actually a very special place to live with distinct cooperative communities of interest. But for us, it's more than that. It's our home. We've lived there for 22 years. So tonight, I ask that you please consider reuniting the community and help us bring Wheaton together. Thank you.
Good evening to the chair and members of the Legislative Redistricting Commission. I am Jennifer White, Legislative Chair of the Patapsco River MD Chapter of the Links Incorporated and a resident of District 10 here in Owings Mills. The Links Incorporated is an international not-for-profit corporation established in 1946. The Links Incorporated is one of the nation's oldest and largest volunteer service organizations of extraordinary women who are committed to enriching, sustaining, and ensuring the culture and economic survival of African Americans and other persons of African ancestry. The Patapsco River MD Chapter has served the Baltimore County community for 31 years. I offer my testimony on behalf of my chapter president and the members of the Patapsco River MD Chapter. When it comes to redistricting, the power of the pen is undeniable. The districts that will result from your work have the power to either empower or disenfranchise communities. It is imperative that those leading redistricting efforts are not only thoughtful, but intentional about ensuring that communities of color and cohesive neighborhoods and communities are respected. As you draw new maps for Maryland, we urge you to consider the following. Continue a fair and transparent process as you consider your next steps. Expose maps for public review and respond to feedback. Make certain that the voting power and participation of communities of color are not diluted or sacrificed, and use the power of the pen to create greater representation of minorities in elected offices, both at the congressional and legislative district level. As you do your work, we also urge you to carefully consider whether the proposal you put fully adheres to the intent and expectations of the Voting Rights Act. Baltimore County has seen its population grow. The county now has a voting age population that is 46% people of color. The communities in West Baltimore County experienced significant shift in our legislative districts after the 2010 census. And we ask that you be mindful of the impact of large shifts on the communities and part of the county and ensure that changes are aimed at empowering the significant African American population represented here and avoid inappropriate packing of communities. Our government at all levels has a long way to go to be fully reflective of the communities that make up our country. As an organization, we are committed to cultivating candidates of color and women candidates for office. Today, you have the power to shape how we are represented federally and in Annapolis for the next 10 years. We urge you to take the time to ensure a fair and equitable map. Thank you for the opportunity to testify you before this evening.
Hi, can you hear me? So I'm gonna just briefly mention the districts and the issues there, and then I have something else to talk about. East Chapel Road, which is between precinct 9-10, but then 305 is in 9-11. The proposed county council maps have us in two completely different county council districts. And I testified there that I don't believe that I belong in a district that is mostly rural. I mean, I love horses, but the issue that my community deals with are a lot different. I live in a building adjacent to public transit and adjacent to Towson Town Center. And I mean, I'm somebody who uses public transit, and I think that maybe For a Senate district, it might make sense. I've had some, very responsive representation so far. But if we were to have a single member delegate district, if that's the way that it shakes out, I do believe that Towson needs to be unified, and that I shouldn't be in a district with, Hunt Valley and Sparks is a little ridiculous. And I'm also here because I'm more than a little annoyed that there were no proposed maps to look at before this meeting. I understand that probably due to the Supreme Court decision that Baltimore County is going to end up taking on a bigger share of Congressional 1. And I would have liked to see your thoughts on that in order to be able to comment on it. I'm not sure if I would prefer a north-south split or east-west split. I'd like to be able to look at my options. And I don't think that this process has been transparent at all. I think you guys have had months, and I'm disappointed at the lack of communication with constituents as far as what it is you're thinking. If counties can have proposed maps, I don't know why we didn't have proposed maps for tonight. And also, as somebody who doesn't drive, I'm appalled that there was no virtual way to testify at this meeting today. It took me an hour to get here. I scheduled mobility to be here at 5 p.m. Mobility didn't even pick me up till after 5. And the only reason that I managed to get here at all is because I know how to advocate. I have, the cell phone number for the head of mobility in my phone. I have several delegates' cell phone numbers in my phone. And not everybody that has a disability that is mobility impaired knows how to navigate state government resources to the extent that I do. So I feel like that this isn't actually a fair opportunity to let the public discuss anything, only having an in-person option. And additionally, I knew that it was very unlikely that I would be here in enough time to sign up in person to testify. So I made sure to sign up last night. The process was so confusing that if I wasn't texting with a delegate last night, I never would have figured out how to sign up. So, this really isn't a fair process, and I'm really pissed off at the whole thing. Are there going to be maps to discuss for that meeting?
So we can start to actually put maps together that reflect what we've been hearing. So that's the plan. So again, virtual on November 15th at 6 p.m. Look on the website, and I'm sure you'll be able to figure out with some help to find that the second virtual hearing that we're going to hold. Okay, the next person I have is Crystal Peters.
Hello, I am Crystal Peters, and I am a mom of 2 children who will eventually attend Delaney High School. And I have some concerns about these maps. Delaney High School is located in precinct 8-007, and it's at the very heart of District 42B. The residents of this precinct and its neighboring precinct 8-006 attend the same feeder schools and go to the same grocery stores and churches and all of the community things that make us a community as the rest of the Lutherville Timonium area. But they are nonsensically carved out of the middle of the district and assigned representation in District 11. And I borrowed Ed's map here to to kind of point this out. The blue is obviously 42B, and the precincts in question are right here, 8006, and I'm assuming this is 8007 because it's the conjoining district. So they are carved out. Let's see. District 11 is a tight-knit community also, separated by District 42B by a major highway, which is I-83, except for these two precincts. These precincts share very little with their neighbors on the west side of I-83 and should be rightly represented by the same elected officials as their neighbors and school communities. In addition, the elected official from 42B has worked on behalf of the school community. Even though the school itself is not in her district, that's Michelle Guyton, Delegate Dr. Michelle Guyton. Let's see. Even more striking is the fact that the most densely populated and racially diverse area in the geographical center of 42B has been gerrymandered into a neighboring district. And as we move toward inclusive districts, I hope that this will be remedied. So again, please keep our communities together. Please put precincts 8-006 and 8-007 into District 42B. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, next person on my list, let's see, that was, is Linda Dorsey Walker. Is she here?
I've submitted my testimony online, but I don't think it was time enough for you all to have it printed out. So you will see that there are some maps attached, and I had hoped to be able to share them with the audience. Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name is Linda Dorsey Walker. I'm a 6th-term elected member of the Baltimore County Democratic State Central Committee, but tonight I come before you as a regular citizen of Maryland who's had the unique opportunity during her career to visit every single county, state county health department and social service department in the state of Maryland. That's given me close familiarity with a lot of places in this state. The congressional and legislative maps that I prepared draw on the experience and knowledge base that I have. I've also had the opportunity to sit in on or listen to every single one of the Maryland Citizen Redistricting Committee meetings and all of your meetings as well. I chair a group of activists called New Horizons. The proposed New Horizons group congressional and legislative redistricting maps follow the basic principles of redistricting, specifically compactness, continuity, and reflect the expressed wishes of various communities of interest. The testimony will primarily focus on the congressional map. So that would be map 1036. Whenever possible, an attempt was made on that map to create congressional districts in which entire counties were kept intact. In almost every case where a district is split, a split occurs only once. One noticeable exception is Anne Arundel County, where splits occur several times. This map keeps 19 of the 24 jurisdictions whole since, they have no splits. 3 of the remaining 5 districts that do have splits because their populations exceed 1 million people or approach that number, and therefore they need to have splits to bring them down to the standard congressional district size of 772,000. The proposed map respects the express wishes of current Congressional District 1 Eastern Shore residents that were expressed at both this council and the other council for a return to the historic linkage they have had for more than 60 years previously, where they were combined with Southern Anne Arundel County, St. Mary's County, Calvert County, and parts of Charles County, thereby negating the need to have any of District 1 in Baltimore County, thereby negating the need to have any of District 1 in Harford County or Carroll County. I recall that at least 8 to 10 people came before you all and asked you all to redistrict in that fashion. Okay? On the proposed map, Northwest Charles County, which includes the urban areas of Waldorf and La Plata, with communities of interest associated with eastern Prince George's County, is separated from the rest of Charles County's rural side. Those two communities are placed in Congressional District 5, which borders southeast DC. District 5 would extend northward from Prince George's County into Anne Arundel County up to Annapolis. Nearly 1/3 of the proposed District 8 in Montgomery County is Hispanic, and the proposed map permits a concentrated power base on the west side of the district, creating the potential for a majority Latino legislative district seat sometime in the future. On the proposed congressional map, a small portion of Baltimore County is shared with Baltimore City, just once on the east side, including the area of Turner Station. Joining all of Harford County solely with Baltimore County would give the urban transient population surrounding Aberdeen Proving Ground, Edgewood Arsenal, Bel Air, and Havre de Grace the attention they need. Okay? That's a young transient community, mostly associated with military. My map, which I will present tonight, tries to reflect the express interests of several communities of interest that have been brought to my attention over the past several months, both at and outside the redistricting meetings. The map shows the requirement for compactness and continuity and so forth. The map removes District 1 representation from Baltimore County, and it reflects the desire of citizens of the Catonsville, Ellicott City, and Columbia area to share representation under the same council member as they believe there are shared communities of interest. It reflects the desire of Turner Station residents to be part of District 7, along with all of Baltimore City, including Cherry Hill, northern Anne Arundel County, specifically the Brooklyn area, and northern Glen Burnie. It reunites as many people from the Eastern Shore requested, that southern portion of Maryland. Let's see. In Western Maryland, the map dips down to include a small portion of Montgomery County. That's in District 6. District 8 in Montgomery County and District 4 in PG County would be the most compact geographically. They're almost perfect circles. District 3, which appears to occupy most of the land in Baltimore County, it looks that way on the proposed map, would actually only account for half of the Baltimore County population. So you see, relative to the proposed legislative map, we're strongly suggesting that we keep multi-member districts in the most densely populated jurisdictions in Maryland, although there may be 1 or 2 districts where a single member district would result in additional minority representation, such as in Owings Mills. Maintain multi-member districts because the power and clout of every voter is enhanced when they have more than one member of their district to turn to for assistance, or to introduce legislation, or to obtain a scholarship, or to recommend a child who's about to graduate, and more than one member to attend community meetings and events on their behalf. Finally, neither of the proposed maps were drawn to be incumbent focused. The proposed New Horizons map have been presented for your consideration in an earnest attempt to bring about meaningful change that also results in greater compactness, congruity, respects community of interest, and reflects the state's changing demographics. Thank you for your time, and I want to say one thing to the first speaker. Because I represent District 11, I always post my Central Committee signs out in Fredonia International Elementary School, going all the way out to the State Agricultural Farm. I think you do not deserve to be neglected or overlooked. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Signed up delegate Michelle Guyton. She's there, okay, okay, that's fine. Good to see. On next person I have is, I think I can understand, Alora Good Signs, is that correct? C-Y-N-E-S? I'm sorry.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Alora Good Cyrus. And as a resident of Baltimore County for over 25 years, a caregiver and a homeowner, I recently cared for my mother, Mary Good. She passed away after she and my dad had raised my brother and our family in our home in the Gwen Oak area. Our home sits in a Congressional District 7, one of the most gerrymandered in the state, and Legislative District 10, which is currently represented by Senator Dolores Kelly and our delegative team, Benjamin Brooks, Jay Jalisi, and Speaker Adrian Jones. The makeup for District 7 congressional map says that it's 61.4% white, 18.9% black, 2% Asian, 11.1% Hispanic, and 5.5% of 2 or more. Based on the 2020 census, Baltimore County's population has increased by over 49,620 to over 856,000 residents. This is an increase of over 6.15%. We know that redistricting is important, as the maps being drawn will not only determine political power and representation at every level of government of the country, but resources will also be allocated based on these decisions, particularly for our youth. I'm a product of Baltimore County Public Schools. I attended the schools in the Northwest area, Woodmore Elementary School, Woodlawn, at the time junior high, now middle school, and Milford Mill High School. When my family moved into our home from West Baltimore City, I was in the 1st grade. Our realtor, who was Esley Martin, sold us our home, and we lived across the street from each other. At the time, we were the only African-American families on the entire street. When we were in school, I was always one of 4 or less, all the way through high school. We have seen lots of minority growth in Baltimore County. Today, Woodmore Elementary School has an enrollment of 614 pre-K through 5-year students with a student-teacher ratio of 17 to 1. The math proficiency is 12% and the reading proficiency is just 15%. Woodlawn Middle School has an enrollment of 622 6th through 8th grade students with a student-teacher ratio of 15 to 1. Even with a gifted program there, the math proficiency is 5% and the reading proficiency is just 26%. Milford Mill Academy has an enrollment of 1,251 students in grades 9 through 12 with a student-teacher ratio of 14 to 1. The math proficiency there is 14% and the reading proficiency rate is just 28%. Why do I bring up the proficiency rates? The ideal proficiency rate is 15%, 1 to 15 for teachers and students. Future projections show that our schools are exceeding capacity utilization by the next decennial census. We are aware that this resource allocation is going to be based on how the lines are drawn. I have served as a mentor, volunteer, and tutor in this county. I know the need is great and continues to increase. Providing resources to students is key to building our future workforce. I encourage the commission to ensure a fair and transparent process. We need our district representatives to respect the desires of the community that they serve. I'd also like to recommend maintaining a hybrid model of multi-member and single-member districts. Studies have shown that women and minorities have a greater potential to be elected to serve our communities in multi-member districts. Multi-member districts also allow for diverse perspectives and engagement.
Maryland's General Assembly is one of the most diverse in the country and is represented well in terms of both race and gender. I hope the Legislative Redistricting Advisory Commission will maintain or increase these numbers based on how we draw our maps. Baltimore County's increase in population can assuredly support more than just one majority-minority district. I support the creation of an additional district. Do not pack African American population into one district that will minimize the power of our vote. As I'm sure the Commission will receive and study community submitted maps, I ask that the Commission provide their draft maps to the community as early as possible. Allow us 2 weeks to review and gather comments prior to hearing a House vote. I want to thank you for your commitment and working to ensure the maps are drawn in a fair and transparent and equitable manner that incorporates the community's interests.
Thank you, thank you. Fergal Malali?
Thank you. My name is Fergal Malali. I'm a resident of District 42A. I want to quickly voice support for some of the suggestions made to the committee before I start up to speak, including making multiple maps available, publishing your maps so we can critique them and understand what you're trying to do, and for making your maps available in a machine-readable format. The advances in consumer-grade mapping software of the last decade have been dramatic, and it is much easier for ordinary members of the public to understand these maps and understand their implications. And so making these maps machine-readable will dramatically improve the transparency of the process. Now, redistricting inevitably conjures up images of backroom deals. The rules that you operate under are so vague that any map you draw invites suspicions that you've drawn this line or that line to reward your friends or punish your enemies. So I have a suggestion for you to make this process more open, more transparent, and less prone to allegations of political showmanship and tricksmanship. I suggest you add rules to the process for yourselves. Make these rules specific, make them quantifiable, make them numeric, and make them public. And then when you publish a map, rate your map numerically against these rules and these goals that you have set yourself. Invite the public to draw maps that do a better job of meeting the goals that you're trying to make. For example, if you were trying to respect community boundaries, as many speakers here tonight are asking you to do, draw those boundaries, publish them, and show how you respect them. Are you trying to respect the Voting Rights Act? And you certainly should. Publish your goals numerically about how many majority-minority districts you want and show how well you achieve that goal. I recognize that this is politics and that people are always going to complain about the maps no matter what. But by imposing numerical rules on yourself, you can improve the openness and transparency of the process and maybe satisfy some of your critics. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I also have here Robin Grammer, member, delegate.
Mr. Senate President, Madam Speaker, committee members, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Robin Grammer. I'm 41 and I've lived in Essex my entire life. In full disclosure, although I'm not disclosing to anybody here, I am one of the state lawmakers representing Eastern Baltimore County. I hadn't planned to speak about the congressional maps today, but I will do so very briefly after hearing some of the comments of folks throughout the room. I've talked about the mail issues that we've had in southeastern Baltimore County. I was actually made fun of by a handful of state lawmakers for doing so. Turns out the issue is much bigger than just southeastern Baltimore County. We've experienced this issue for 6 years now. This has gone way too long. This is way too far. And I don't feel that with the maps as drawn, we've been well served. And I say that respectfully because I believe everybody has a sincere will to fix this problem. I think if Baltimore County suburbs had a congressional district, I think this problem would have gotten a lot better attention. Respectfully, I think the Maryland Citizens Redistricting Commission, the map that they drew a district that would give the Baltimore County suburbs a congressional district. I think that district would be diverse culturally, racially, physically, geographically, and every other way you can think. And I think the suburbs of Baltimore County deserve that. And I urge you to consult that map. I'm here today primarily to advocate that in the drawing of the state legislative maps, we keep unified the communities of Dundalk, Edgemere, Essex, Fort Howard, Middle River, and Rosedale. These communities have been unified in law for nearly 2 decades and have spoken with one voice for much longer. Many years ago, when local business owners worked towards a theme for the redevelopment of our area, the theme they selected was Gateway to the Chesapeake. And if you look at a map of Baltimore County, our gateway to the Chesapeake is the peninsulas of Greater Dundalk and Greater Essex. When the residents of Eastern Baltimore County speak of the challenges and struggles we face, I'll give you our most recent example. We had a meeting at the Back River Restoration Committee where we talked, among other things, about the issues with midges caused by the effluents at the Back River sewage treatment plant. And a lot of Baltimore County, Baltimore City lawmakers here, I think we all understand that this is not an East Side problem. But the people that showed up because they've got millions of these bugs on their property, they're concerned about the problems in Back River, are primarily the constituents from the communities of Dundalk and Essex. And frequently, it is exclusively the people of our peninsulas that are speaking to these issues. When folks speak about the, and thanks and appreciation of the amenities that we have, the opportunities to work the water, the access to fishing, or because they just like to go out on a boat sometimes, they speak of the communities of Essex and Dundalk. When folks speak in defense of our natural resources, the Man-O-War shoals, we want to keep our resources whole, it is exclusively the folks of Essex and Dundalk. We share a heritage of manufacturing and steel, whether you talk about the family of Henrietta Lacks or the folks that lived in the town of Sparrows Point, or the Grammer family, my grandfather's father, uncle, and myself who worked in steel. This is a culture and a heritage that the communities of Dundalk, Edgemere, Essex, Fort Howard, Middle River, and Rosedale share, and I wonder why we would create a map that would separate these people as been done elsewhere. Previously, there were proposals in other committees to cut Eastern Baltimore County 3 ways. We would have been cut into Harford County, one way into Harford County, one way into Towson, one way into the city. That's a hot mess, and when I say that, I don't mean to disparage Harford County or Towson or the city, but I don't see, it's an injustice to me to use Eastern Baltimore County as glue for the rest of the state. So I think I advocate that we keep Eastern Baltimore County together. I will comment briefly on single-member districts. There are frequently too many cooks in the kitchen from a lawmaker's perspective. Every single person in Maryland should have the attention and focus of one person they can call their own representative. Majority minority districts have been a hot button topic, especially here in Baltimore County. If you believe in more majority minority districts and you believe in arithmetic, single member districts is the way to go. With that, I'll yield the balance of my time, and thanks for your attention.
Thank you very much. That concludes the list I have in front of me. I don't know, we have a couple of minutes if anybody else wants to comment. This would be your opportunity. Over there.
Good evening. I hope you all can hear me with my mask on. I do have a pretty big mouth, but we are still in a pandemic. Okay, so I am the chair of the Black Women for Positive Change Baltimore chapter and a member of a host of organizations. I am in favor of the 2-district option proposed by the ACLU, both NAACP chapters and the League of Women Voters, as well as the majority of the voters in these proposed districts. Representation is important and vital. It is imperative that individuals are part of the decision-making process and that districts are reflective of the people that reside in these districts. This process will be in effect for 10 years. If Baltimore County legislators make these important decisions without considering what these citizens have said today, how is it any different? Sorry, people trying to send a message. How is it any different from gerrymandering? Are we looking to find a legal loophole to use redistricting as the new gerrymandering? This is compacting a specific set of minority voters, limiting their ability to affect rules, laws, and regulations which will be responsible for affecting growth and change for years to come. I've been a resident of Baltimore County for over 40 years, and the time for change and more representation is now. This is a move in the wrong direction. Those who are opposed to these redistricting efforts are a part of an effort to facilitate justice and promote equity. We also need seats at the table on the boards and commissions, and in addition to that, on the councils. Representation is needed at every level of advocacy and politics. It's what democracy is. We elect our leaders, and they are supposed to represent us, not them choosing who they want as constituents. And I also want to say that even after looking at the maps across the country, and we saw the elections yesterday, most of these maps are all red. And it is not representative of the individuals that live in these communities. And one more last thing here. Again, all studies show that representation is crucial. And some individuals, I definitely support multi-districts because that gives individuals a chance to have accessibility, to approach people that they don't feel comfortable with. So multi-districts are very much important. Thank you, and thank you for having this forum for us. Danielle Winky Smith. Thank you.
I think that runs through the list. Is there anybody else? Oh. Yeah, sure. I could, well, took the list. What, basically, it's either, for maps, it's maps underscore LRAC at mlis.state.md.us. If you want, they'll be on the board, but I'm going to do so much memory. Sir, did you wish to speak? Okay, whoop, careful.
Good evening, thank you. My name is Herbert Weiss. I'm the president of the Reisterstown Improvement Association, but I'm not speaking for the association. I just have a brief comment about my own personal situation. I've lived in Reisterstown for a number of years. When I first came to Reisterstown, I was in the 6th Congressional District represented by Roscoe Bartlett, who mostly represented Garrett and Allegheny counties at the time. In the last redistricting, I was moved to the 7th Congressional District, where I was represented at the time by Elijah Cummings and presently by Kwaizi Mfume. I like all three of the gentlemen who have represented me. However, I have to say that in the many years I've lived where I do, none of them, not Mr. Bartlett, Mr. Cummings, or Mr. Mfume, have ever visited my community. I'd like to have a congressional district compact enough that I can see my congressman once in a while. That's not too much to ask for, I think, and I think my fellow Reisterstonians would probably concur. That's all. Thanks for your time. Appreciate all your work.
Okay, well then I think, seeing nobody else, I think we are adjourned. Thank you all for being here. We'll be doing some hard work pretty soon, and we'll get those maps out as soon as we can. Thank you.